adjust my tie every once in a while, but it works. So storytelling, especially storytelling in business. Interesting that in business, storytelling is all the rage. It's a buzzword. I just got hired to do a speaking engagement for a major financial services company on the topic of storytelling for financial advisors. So people know that storytelling is crucial. It's how we communicate with each other. It's everything. But on the other hand, when you just use the word storytelling, it has this thing where it sounds like it's got this childish aspect to it. It's got not serious. It's not like marketing or messaging or something like that. It sounds like storytelling. And so a lot of people, they're interested, but they don't really know how it all fits together. So for the past 6 weeks, Tim, Wendy, and Debbie have been developing stories, and there are 4 stories that I believe are crucially important if you're going to do any kind of business. They are your human story, your testimonial story, your origin story, and your secret sauce story. So what are they? The secret sauce story is the thing that you do in your business that nobody else does. It's your unique differentiator. It's one thing to just say what it is, but it's a whole lot more credible, powerful, and believable if you have a story. And it doesn't have to be a long story, 2 to 4 minutes, and plus a short version, a story about how it works or how you came up with it. So that's your secret sauce story. Then you've got another story called your origin story. And the origin story you might be familiar with is the superhero origin story. Why did Spider-Man become how did he get his powers? Why did Batman do the things that he does? How did Superman come about? And why kryptonite? So this is all the origin story. As entrepreneurs, each one of us has an origin story. And it's not just why we do what we do, but it's why we do how we do what we do. I'll say that again. I'll try to slow it down. It's not just why we do what we do, but it's why we do how we do what we do. And that touches on, again, our secret sauce story. The 2 other stories that I recommend everybody has, one is what I call the testimonial story. It's a customer journey story. It's something that demonstrates value that your customers and clients have had as a result of working with you. And it's in the form of a story. And the 4th story is what I call the human story. And it's really not said for any specific hard-nosed business purpose other than for people to know what kind of person you are. Something that drives you. It doesn't have to be a big story. It doesn't have to be the big thing that drives you, but it's something that shows you, he's human, she's human. I think I like that person. Really, that's what it's about. And when you think about it, you might think I'm only suggesting that you have 4 stories and that's it. But each one of these types of stories, with the possible exception of, well, even the secret sauce, but the possible exception of the origin story, you might have multiple testimonial stories, depending on who's in front of you, which one you're going to tell. Multiple human stories, depending on who's in front of you, which one you're going to tell. A couple of variations of your origin story, which you slant according to who's in front of you, how you're going to tell it. And the secret sauce story, because none of us have just one secret sauce, but it's which one are you going to choose that is most relevant to the people in front of you. So that's what these people have been doing for the last 6 weeks. They've been developing human story, testimonial story, secret sauce story, and human story. Thank you. For their own businesses. And it's really a blend between the human side of communication with the business side of communication. And I think everybody in this virtual room knows that, nothing communicates more powerfully than a story. So enough about me. I will talk a little bit more about the unique angle that we have, the inside out story, but I'll save that for later. Wendy, Debbie, Tim, just top line, what surprised you over the last 6 weeks about the work that we did and what you've learned as a result?
No matter how much you think you know, there's so much more you can learn.
That applies to everybody, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Debbie, what about you?
I think that even though you have a story to tell, there is so much more to it to be able to tell it effectively and get really the underlying message that you want to get across from that story. There's really good techniques and tips, and there's a lot to it. So that's, I mean, that it's mind blowing.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Wendy?
You have a unique way of where you blend things, and the exercises, I really like the exercises that we do each time. And I have gained great insight from the group, especially Tim, and how simple he makes it look. Like he really, really does. And I know how great they are as a reflection of working with you for so many years, but I overcomplicate it, and I feel like I need to pack the kitchen sink in when I do things, and it trips me up. But I'm very hopeful that I will be as great as they are at some point in the future.
Awesome. Well, listen, since you mentioned Tim, why don't we start with Tim? And Tim, you know what? No preamble. I'm just going to share my screen, and we're going to say this is optimized video clip, advanced video, share. I have to relearn this every single time.
I'm gonna go get popcorn.
This is Tim's secret sauce story that I love this. I love this. So enjoy. Have to get my mouse over there.
When I lived in the Chicago suburbs, I loved attending networking events. I absolutely loved it. They were so much fun to me. I loved going to them. I helped organize some. But the one thing I really, really hated was that I had to drive all the way into the city every time I wanted to go to an event. But then one day, somebody in the suburbs was hosting an event. Now, the unfortunate thing for me, it was all the way in these suburbs, not where I lived, but I went anyway. And I was just amazed that somebody had done this in the area that they were at. These two people that organized the event were very well known online. I had known them for years, and they were very well respected. So when I was at the event, I went up to both of them and I said, "This is fantastic. I wish somebody would do this in my neighborhood." And they both looked at me and said, "Tim, why don't you?" Why don't I? You know, it's amazing when somebody helps read the label of the jar that you're stuck in that you can't see, what becomes possible. I ended up taking that idea of hosting my own event and turned it into a reality. I got the venue, I promoted it, I worked out all the logistics, I got people to show up, even though the fear of nobody showing up was ever present in my mind. But with their encouragement of seeing the label that I couldn't see, that I could host this event, I was able to pull it off. And not only pull that event off, but at the end of the event, all the people came up to me and said, "Tim, when are we doing this again?" I didn't have any plans to do anything other than host one event. But I started planning the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. For over 2 years, I hosted a monthly event that started with 13 people showing up when I was afraid that nobody would show up. to hosting an event that averaged 45 people each month and had over 350 unique people attend over those 2+ years. My question to you is, what idea do you have? What jar are you stuck in that you can't read the label of, that you need somebody else to help read the label for you and turn that idea into a reality?
Yeah, congratulations. So rumor has it, I picked the wrong video. That was the
Really?
previous version.
Well,
So-
actually, it wasn't even the same video because I recorded a new one. I
Oh,
recorded my
man.
graduation one.
Well, then I'll tell you what, I think we have enough time. We're gonna come back to that one. How's that?
That sounds good. And I love that like people might be able to see, even though it won't be the same video, like
The
how
before
we
and
improve.
after.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but I kind of went, this sounds awful familiar.
Well, not to me. I'm wondering why somebody didn't do that to me years ago. Get me going and doing exactly that.
Wow, see, that's cool. So there you go, Tim. You made someone think exactly down the avenue you wanted them to go.
Well,
So
I would have been there.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. And Tim, have you ever told that story before?
Not really. I mean, I've mentioned it a few times, but not in that context.
So what impact did it have on you that you realized that this was a pretty foundational story for what you do?
You know, most of my life I've spent doing things my own way and on my own. And I realized the things that I wouldn't have gotten done that I ended up doing were a direct result of somebody else kind of helping me, prodding me, suggesting to me what I should do. And it was obvious that I should, because they were telling me what I already knew, but I wasn't telling myself. And that was like the first time I saw the impact of doing something, you know, that with the help of somebody else. And I'm like, you know, how many times have other people told me how much I've helped them by giving them guidance, by listening to what they want to do and just having them have a fresh outlook on how to do it. And so I think that was the first time in my life I really saw the impact of that. And that's why I chose to share it.
Very cool. So I have a question for you. Is the correct video the one that says Secret Sauce Story V2?
No,
That's not that one.
it's under your showcase folder where you told us to put it.
Uh-oh, I put it under week 6.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I was in the wrong. Totally my fault. All right. Well, this deserves a redo of, there we go. Okay, we're gonna do Tim's again, but the proper one. So let's see if we could do this properly here. Totally my fault. Showcase. Here we go. Oh, yes. What I like about this is well, we'll talk about timing after.
I was 14 years old and graduating middle school. My parents decided to host a party for me celebrating my achievement. Achievement? What achievement? I hated school. I had felt so lost and like I was a nobody. Yes, I was the kid who got asked to try out for the basketball team and got cut. I was the kid who got an A+ on his report card. Yes, A+ in home ec. During that party, I just couldn't put on the smiley face for everybody anymore. I retreated back up to my room laid in my bed, and had tears coming down my cheeks. What is it that you don't like about school? I feel like an outsider and I'm lost. How can you change that? I want to create a sense of belonging. How can you create a sense of belonging? I can let everybody know who I am. That's it. I could let everybody know who Tim McDonald was by the time I graduated high school. As high school began, I started growing out my hair, ended up being halfway down my back. I had 7 earrings. I wore board shorts and Hawaiian shirts every day in Chicago, even in the middle of winter. I went on to be elected student council president my senior year. I was no longer lost in the crowd. They knew who I was. When you change your outlook, you can change your outcome. Thank you.
Okay, I get it. Now I remember.
Lucky you were in that school and not mine.
So what is it when you change your outlook, you change your outcome?
Yes. And that
Cool
was the
phrase.
first moment I realized that.
When you told that, when you came up with that story, or when you reflected back on
When I
that
reflected
story?
back, that was the earliest time in my life I realized it. I mean, since then I've done it quite a few times, but
Yeah.
that was the first moment I realized and saw the power of it.
So let me ask you this: when did have you told that story before you did the series?
I attempted to. It was I hadn't met you, Michelle, and it was like it was an idea that I knew was good, but I didn't develop it well enough, and it did not go over as well as
So
I had
when did you create that link between the story itself and that end phrase, the end conclusion, which is the wisdom? You know, when you change your outlook, you change your outcome.
It took me years, but it all came about during the 6 weeks of our workshop.
Yeah, cool.
And I think that's one of the, you know, I think it was brought up, but that's one of the powers of, I think what we had was, you know, it wasn't just you helping us along. It was the collective effort of all of us giving each other feedback and giving us ideas that really helped develop some of those key words that we use, some of the ways that we phrase things that came out much cleaner for people than the way that our initial, you know, interpretation of it was.
Cool. Well, I'd like to get to Debbie's story, but before I
you
do,
do, that was awesome, Tim. That was, you know, seeing the evolution from your first time you did it to this is just night and day. So,
Yeah.
you know, hats off.
Thank you.
does anybody have a question for Tim about the development of that story, or about the story, or about what he does and how it influences what he does today?
What do you do, Tim?
I think you called me a life-changing coach, but that's typically what I do, is try and work with people to help them get unstuck.
Really?
Yeah.
Is there a title for that? You're an
You
unstuck
can
coach?
you can call me whatever. I mean, I'm not a big person about labels and titles, but you can call me whatever you want. So I just generally say coach.
Okay.
Yeah, usually I use WD-40. Seems to work. All right, Debbie, let's watch Debbie's video. And I'll make sure that I get the right one.
Yeah, back in week 6.
You put it in week 6?
Yeah.
You didn't put it in,
I don't think so.
you put it in the showcase.
I did?
Yeah.
Whatever it is the only one there, hopefully. If I'm not in a black shirt. Okay, that's the one.
I'm standing at the edge of my 6-car driveway, looking at the 3 feet of snow I need to shovel after a winter storm. I wasn't sure I could do this. You see, I was in my second depression, barely getting through the days to take care of my 2 daughters. And now I had just finished a nasty divorce. I was granted custody of the kids and the house, but my ex-husband purposely flooded the house, telling me, "You'll never sell it." It was so damaged, it needed to be gutted. And I needed the driveway cleared for all the different contractors that were coming and going from the house. I would have given anything to pay someone to shovel it, but I was also going through bankruptcy proceedings, so hiring someone was out of the question. The girls were all excited to help mommy shovel at first, but the snow was wet and heavy. Not even 20 minutes into the job, they found it too hard and were tired. It was more effort to get them to help me than it was to just let them play in the snow, so I began to do it myself. Did I tell you the driveway could fit 6 cars comfortably? Did I mention the snow was wet and heavy? 1 hour goes by, a quarter of the driveway is done. 2 hours go by and I'm halfway there, but it's getting harder and harder. But I have no choice. I need to get this done today for the contractors. The 3rd hour goes by and I'm barely hanging in. Every shovel is getting more and more painful to throw. At this point, the pain in my arms reminded me of my competitive swimming days when my coach would push me in training to the point of so much pain, I would go home and I could barely lift my arms to put food in my mouth. If my coach could push me way beyond what I thought I could do when I was a child, I could do the same now. I stopped thinking how hard it was and started thinking about the next shovel. One at a time, the next shovel. Stay in the moment. Think of nothing else but the next shovel. Well, over 4 hours later, I finished. No sooner had I dragged my body into the car, tears started streaming down my face. And the next thing you know, I'm crying like a baby. The girls asked me, "Mommy, what's wrong? Why are you so sad?" I said, "Oh no, girls, I'm not sad. I'm actually really happy. I gave it everything I got and I got the job done." That mindset was really how I got through all the challenges in my life and parenting. And there were many. 2 adopted children with multiple learning disabilities and mental illnesses, including a suicidal teen, dealing with challenges of kids growing up LGBTQ, not to mention the stress and trauma that continued with my ex-husband. I ended up having 2 more major depressions because of the uncontrollable chaos. I do believe the major reason I got through it all was my mindset. Stay in the moment. Think of nothing else but the task at hand. Give it everything you have. Never give up and get the job done. I'm now teaching this in my advocacy company, Complex Parenting Resolve, for parents who are also dealing with major issues and over-the-top crazy family circumstances that's making them completely overwhelmed and desperate for strategies. It is definitely an effective skill to calm the chaos in your head. Thank you.
Whoa.
Pretty darn cool. Pretty darn cool. So I'm going to open up the floor. Even I'm not going to say anything. Who's got a question for Debbie about that?
I think she answered all mine.
Well, I don't have a question, but Debbie, that is amazing. Because I mean, most of you don't know where she started with that story, and what we just saw now is like, I mean, you're like looking at an amateur and a professional. So
Oh,
you
thank
did a
you.
great job.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks. I don't necessarily, when Michelle kept saying you have to keep practicing and practicing, I had no idea how true and profound that was.
Well, say more about that, Debbie. What do you mean?
Well, I think, you iron, I don't know how many times I did it. I mean, I must have done it at least, I'd say 20 times at least. And, I mean, obviously you get the coaching on content and, you've got it in your head and you kind of do it a certain way and then you twist it all around in a different way. And then you go, okay, well, that doesn't sound good. And then I think one of the most important things that you told us was don't listen to yourself. Listen to it as if you're somebody else listening to you. And that, I think, really, really has done it for me because I get in my head really easily because I got so much to say. And so anyways, it just, the more I practice it, the more I played with it, the better I felt it was coming out. So, and then it would just, everything kind of rolled. So
Now, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked him. Had you told that story before?
no, never.
Never. And when did you make the connection between that story, that experience? There are 3 dots to link together here that I see. Dot number 1 is the experience in the driveway.
Yeah.
Dot number 2 is your experience as a competitive swimmer.
Yeah.
And dot number 3 is how you approach your complex parenting resolve.
Yeah.
It really is your secret sauce. It's your methodology that is the core of what you help other parents who are facing the same. When did you kind of come up with linking those 3 things?
Well, first of all, when you started telling us that everybody has a secret sauce, and I had no idea what my secret sauce was. But I guess I just kept asking what the most often people ask me if they know my story, and believe me, it was 1/100th of the story that I actually have. But once people start hearing my story, they go like, how did you survive? And I never could answer that question. And so I started diving into it. And the first thing that came up was the competitive swimming. But I mean, that's, you're a kid and it's like, okay, yes, you get determination and you learn discipline and, to push yourself to your nth degree. But it really, I don't know how I do remember the driveway situation, just because it's so simple, but it was just so hard for me at the time. And so I guess I just kind of linked them all together from that perspective, but it was really your secret sauce. And it was almost like a process from there.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I hear, between the words of what you're saying. And this happens a lot with the people that I work with. A lot of people come to me, they think they know their story, or they already have a story, and they just want my help to piece it together and make it more compelling, impactful, powerful, all of that stuff. And they don't realize that in the process of digging through the story actually gets you to a much more fundamental place about who you are and why you do what you do and why you do how you do what you do. And it sounds to me like that was
no, that's exactly, I think that's exactly it. Like that whole deep dive of, what you do, how you do, when you do, why you do, I don't know, there's 5 or 6 of them. And just going through that process. Yeah. I mean, it's really, I find it, it sounds corny, but it's true. It's life-changing.
Cool. Wendy, I know you don't have a story for us today, but do you want to talk about that notion about digging through the layers in how you approached your stories?
Yeah, because I thought I knew my story too before coming into this. And having gone through the last few weeks, I realized that there's like a lot more to my story And
Are you saying there's a lot more to your story that even you were giving yourself credit for?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, going through this helped me kind of see that I'm really just beginning to get in touch with those stories. And I thought, like, oh, I know my life, I know my story. And coming into this, it's like what Debbie was saying about how the listener hears it. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. So I am really trying to retrain my brain in this approach.
Mhm.
So I thought I knew my life pretty well and I could just like tell somebody my life, but no, there's a lot more to it. So now I know I was having problems.
Yeah, cool. So, I'd like to point out to everybody else who's just watching this, is that the stories are, I mean, Tim's was 2.5 minutes and Debbie's was a hair over 4 minutes. And that's a complete story. Have you had a chance to, so we're not talking about 10, 20-minute stories. We're talking about literally 2 to 4 minute stories. So you could tell a 6-minute story, but that's a long story, especially if you're on stage or sharing it. But have you have any of you had the opportunity to share any of these stories in conversation with people?
Are you talking to us or just everybody in general?
Yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you.
I really haven't.
Well,
Yeah.
I've started to do it because I'm still at the beginning of developing my company, and I'm starting to do a coaching course, and I'm writing my own book, and I'm trying to get. I'm going to start eventually probably get on the speaking circuit. So in this whole process, I am now, and that's one of the reasons why it was so important to take this course first. I'm trying to now instill it into, my interactions with people. For instance, in the course that I'm going to be offering in the fall, like I'm trying to enroll people, and what better way than to enroll them through, kind of real authentic, a storytelling that really gets the message across like so beautifully.
Yeah, it draws them in.
Yeah.
So Tim, we talked about the short like what you saw there was a performance of a story. But we also, I don't want anybody to think that's the only way you tell a story. We also tell a story. In fact, you often hear me say, forget the word story and just think of the word example. Because it's really an example. That story is an example of a point you want to make. Tim, let me ask you, if you were to do that, like, that 3.5 sentence format, how would you tell that story, like in 3.5 sentences?
My story?
Yeah.
Oh, reminds me of a graduation party my parents threw for me when I was graduating middle school. I hated middle school, realized why I hated middle school and could change it. Went on to become student council president. Change your outlook, change your outcome.
Yeah, cool. So that's an example of a conversational version of the same story. Same story. And then somebody, if they're interested, they could ask you more about it, and then you could pick out the parts that are relevant to that person. All right, well, I've got a story I could share. All right, testimonial story. A few years ago, the executive director of a not-for-profit in Winnipeg called me to ask about doing a week-long training for their staff. Now, this is an organization that provides health-related services in the northern part of the city, like one of the roughest parts of Winnipeg. Now, I'd never been asked by an organization like that for a training, so I asked them, why? And they said that they had taken a training from a practitioner in Boston on a holistic approach to providing care, and they absolutely loved it. So why? Okay. And when they were back in their offices, they did a little debrief on why it was such a great program. And everyone said it was because of the stories. Now, the stories really helped them understand the material, visualize how it was relevant to them, and remember it. And they realized that it was a skill that they themselves should learn how to do. Okay, I said. They flew me to Winnipeg. They put me up for a week, the usual. And every day I went in and took them through my curriculum, exercises, the whole bit. And it was cool. In the room was at least one person from every department. Frontline staff, the people who get called in by community leaders or the police or the ambulances, the nurses who take care of the people who walk in, many of whom are refugees, don't speak English. The fundraising person was there, obviously. The executive director was there. She regularly gives presentations at fundraising luncheons, government business leaders. She's the face of the organization. We go through the week. I thought it went really well. People really seemed to like it, gave me lots of good feedback. So I figured when I got back, I could ask for a testimonial. I waited, a few days, sent an email. Hey, it was great working with you. Do you think I could get a testimonial? Something I could use? Nothing. Okay. Wait a few more days, another email. Nothing. They're busy. All right, I get it. Waited a month, left a voicemail. Hey, I'd love to know what results you got from the training. Give me a call back. Nothing. All right, so now I'm thinking, they hated it. They didn't like me. It didn't work. I should have known not to take on this particular assignment. Now, exactly 11 months later, I get a call. Hello, Michelle. It's the executive director. Okay, Michelle, can you come back and do a follow-up week with us? Nancy, I've been trying to reach you for almost a year. I was thinking, well, Oh, Michelle, we loved it. She says, in fact, right after you left, some of the staff created their own little club so that they could keep on improving. The frontline people told me they were more effective in the field. And using your storytelling techniques, we raised $1 million that I don't think we would have been able to access otherwise. No, it was great. Sorry we didn't get back to you to tell you all of that. Nancy, I said, would it be okay if I ask you for a testimonial? That testimonial is on my website. There you go. So that is what you call a testimonial story. It's actually a testimonial story about a testimonial story. So it's like sitting in the barber shop and seeing the mirrors on both sides. Not that I really remember what that's like, but anyway. So and once you get the idea, once you get the template down for what makes a customer journey or a testimonial story, you realize that any interaction where you've been able to add value to a customer or a client, but there's also been some hiccup along the way. The hiccup is what creates the story. Without the hiccup, you don't have a story. You've got a bald-faced testimonial that people don't believe. You need the hiccup. That's the key to making it into a story. And once you realize what elements those are and what you need, then any interaction that you've been able to add value to somebody else could turn into a testimonial story. So I'll open this up to questions from anybody now. What do you like? What do you don't like? What intrigues you about it? And who is that person sitting behind Stephen?
I think it's a picture.
No, that's just my background screen thing for Zoom. That's my late mother.
Well, she's watching over you.
Yeah. My guardian angel.
Yeah. Rob, where are you? Are you in Aurora?
I'm in King City.
Well, I wasn't that far off.
Close.
Yeah.
Great job, everybody, on the stories. You and I'm a big believer, and that's why I jumped on. I've been trying to connect with Michelle forever, and August is a little quiet for us, so I thought I'd join in and see what this is all about. And I've been in business. This is our 45th year in business. I've used stories all the time from. I mean, that's what we do. We're corporate communication. So storytelling. I liked it, Michelle, when you said human story and business to combine together. That's what business needs, and that's what business lacks. Especially, like we do mostly corporate, so we're dealing with the all states of the world and pharmaceutical companies and that. And there's the lack of emotion. And communication, of course, is still today staggering with all the digital tools that are at our fingertips. And one of my things is, communication is not just one thing in business, it's everything.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's what I've been preaching since I was in my 20s, kind of. And because I see it every day, silos from marketing. So communicating with your customer is one discipline, and then communicating with your employee on the other side is a separate discipline. I understand that, but what I preach is do it together. Like what you're telling your customers should be what you're telling your employees. And the messaging might be the language might be a little different, but the true essence of the why is you should be sharing it to both audiences. And therefore with digital now, so what, if you're training an employee on a product or something, the customer should see that same, design it so that the communication is interchangeable. And that way everyone truly is on the same page. And how do you do that? You use emotion and storytelling. And so that's a great skill that not a lot of people have.
Interesting. So what you saw here was kind of like the solopreneur version of the work you do.
Yeah.
When I also work with startups who are looking to raise. In fact, the last company I worked with said that, now I'm sure they had a great product. I wasn't the only reason that they were able to raise, but they raised $10 million as a result of my helping them craft their story. Nice. And the thing is, I was meeting resistance every step of the way. I said, no, people don't want to hear that. They just want to hear benefits, that usual thing. Well, it does tell me what it does, but everybody competes on that level. But for them, the way to get out their point of differentiation was through their origin story.
Right.
And when you think about the origin story is just as powerful for the employees, to your point, for being proud of why I work here. This is what I represent.
Yep. People, unhappy employees and unhappy results in an unhappy customer down the line sooner or later. But shrink it down to there's so much clutter. People are just inundated with information. How do you cut through? Not with features and benefits. Get that every second of every day on 5 different devices that I'm looking at right here. It's the emotion. It's the story that will cut through the clutter. The human connection is what's missing with digital. And the days of sitting in front of your TV and building an attachment to a product or a person or a celebrity, Lucille Ball to whatever. I'm talking old now. It's that emotional connection. And you guys, Debbie touched me with her story and her challenges. Like, wow, good for you. And that will lead to another interaction. I want to hear more, right? Not, I did this and so that's me.
That's a tattoo on my forearm. Let the world feel your heartbeat.
Can I tell you about the stories and that? When I started out doing it, I did do that with people, and I did basically do that sort of thing, and then it stopped for some reason. And you're right, people say, oh, they don't need that, they're all interested in this and all the rest. But I had clients that I built a story on, and it was about people. And I'd say that, and people would look at me like I'm crazy, right? Because we're talking the internet, I'm doing websites, whoa. And and it really did work, but I backed off after a while. because everybody was telling me, you know, it's, oh no, it's this now, it's that now. And I think I'm going to go back to it.
Good.
I just have one thing to say is that storytelling seems to be in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, it seems to be like the latest thing, you know, like everybody realizes, oh, you need the emotions to sell and all that. Oh, you have to tell a story. So everybody goes, oh, okay, tell a story. But like, first of all, Michelle's been doing this for like forever. No offense, Michelle, but I mean, for a long, I mean, not as long as I've known him, and that's a long time, but much longer than that. But he knows how to make it dive deeper. And I think that's really, really what's so important with his teaching, because there's other people that say, yeah, you know, you have to tell your story. But they don't get into the depth, and they don't get into the, you know, the real, you know, inside out of the story, and how, you know, the personal side can become a general message. And, you know, all, I mean, Michelle really has a gift. In my opinion, he's got a gift for that.
And I think that there's one thing though that Michelle does that is so different than what other people do. He never tries to suggest what your story is.
Let's do the work.
And that is sometimes the most difficult part as personally, but because he does that, he's able to do exactly what you just said, Debbie.
No,
because then he hears what your story is. Yeah,
you're bang on, Tim. Damn it, he doesn't. He doesn't make it easy for you.
It's you know, storytelling is a skill, and not everyone has it, and you can always learn, you know, improve on it. And Michelle's an expert on telling it. You can't ramble on too long. It's got to be the right temperament for the right occasion. There's all these subtleties in telling your story. No matter how, you know, compelling it is, you have to refine it so that people will actually, you know, hang on and listen. You know, shorter is, you know, you know, the internet is all about short. But you've got an audience that has an extremely short attention span, but extremely high expectations. So, and the 30-year-olds now, I learned the hard way, the 30-year-olds and the 60, like us, like me, those audiences are now combined. It's like, oh no, this is for a young audience. You know, older folks, they want the same quality and dynamic presentation that young folks want. It's one audience now. So that's another thing I learned. The other thing I just want to mention is the likability factor. People do, and it's for small businesses especially, the likability factor is often overlooked because it's all about the features and benefits and how great I am and what I've done. And if people do business with who they like, especially individuals and consultants and entrepreneurs, they don't like you, they won't hire you. And so you've got to have that. And again, Michelle's great at teaching that through story. The inner personality of you has to come out. And wow, you know, I want to do business. You know, like with you, Tim. You know, you got all these subscribers because they got to know you. Those are some basics that people forget. The likability factor.
The likability factor, absolutely, which is
and the why too. You started off by saying, and you've got that why sort of thing. I know we're going over, but you know, there's a great, you know, Simon Sinek. People don't do.
Yes, love him.
People don't buy what you do; they buy why you do it.
Yeah.
And the why is who you are.
Yeah.
So the motives have to be sincere and genuine, and you're not just trying to, you know, sell product.
But Michelle teaches you how to find your why.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill, and that's why he is Michelle.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, I'm blushing, but thank you very much. We're at the top of the hour. I want to stay true to our 60 minutes approximately for the show. I want to thank you for being here. We just launched a new website called Inside Out Storytelling. And it is 93% finished. You are welcome to go to it. InsideOutStorytelling.com. Now, I want to thank especially Tim, Wendy, and Debbie for braving braving their hearts and their souls and showing us a piece of who they are today.
And when's your next workshop, Michelle?
Well, we're doing another cohort of this storytelling, I think starts on September 14th. And then we're going to do one more after that, but the one after that is going to be take one of the stories that we've developed in the series, and we're just going to work on that story for 5 weeks. And we're going to look at everything. We're going to look at comedy. We're going to look at structure. We're going to look at language, how to write for the ears instead of writing for the eyes. Because when we write, we tend to write like it's going to be read. But now we need to write because it's going to be heard. What difference does that make? We're going to be looking at where we could add the performance aspects, the act outs, the dialogue, all of those things. And that's why we need, 5 weeks, pick one story, but you have to have gone through this first so that you have one good story that you want to work on and refine and improve. So that's what we're going to do. But the very, very next one is September 14th. And if you know someone who would get value out of this, please direct them to insideoutstorytelling.com.
Thanks, Michelle, for a great 6 weeks.
Yes, thank you. And thank everybody for showing up today. It
Yeah.
means a lot for all of us, I'm sure, to have people hear our stories.
Oh, it's been great. It's absolutely been great. It's the best thing since this pandemic.
Love that. All right. Thank you.
Put that on your website.
Bye-bye.